Hello, gentle friends. My name is Gina Dominique, and I hope that you are having an absolutely wonderful day so far. Today, you see the title of this video, so you know what we're doing. I am bearing my soul. I am sharing all of my embarrassing packing fails for you so that you can avoid those same pitfalls the next time you decide to travel. The trip in question took place in the fall of 2025. My husband and I went to Europe, mostly to visit his parents in Spain, but we also traveled around Spain a little bit. We went to Portugal with his parents for a weekend. We went for another weekend to Manchester to visit some friends. So lots of different locations, lots of different climates. The whole time was about 5 weeks total that we were abroad, and it was my first time traveling carry-on only for an international trip. So lots of new things, trying to get my bearings and pack effectively. And of course, no one gets everything perfectly correct the first time. I mean, if you do, fantastic, but I feel like most of us do not. I certainly didn't. So here is where I went wrong. Number one, let's start with the bags that I took with me. So for my main large carry-on piece of luggage, I went with the Fjallraven Farden 42-liter carry-on travel backpack. And as you can see, I keep some things hooked to the outside, but I absolutely love this bag. It performed admirably. This was not a fail. This was an absolute victory. It was my personal item where I feel like I went a little astray. I had my reasons though. So for my personal item, I went with the Fjallraven Konkin number 2 15-inch laptop backpack. And on the trip over, I left the main compartment completely empty. I think I had a couple of things in there that were going to stay there, like some power converters that we were bringing and snacks, things like that. But mostly it looked like this. And the idea was I was going to carry it by these 2 straps. I could loop my arm through very easily. And on the way back home, it would be filled with anything that I purchased while abroad. And that was a good idea and a bad idea. First reason that it was a bad idea is because I didn't check what it would be like to carry this thing when it was fully packed out and expanded and heavy. And so these straps, as you can sort of tell, I think, become much shorter when this is fully packed out. So it was a lot harder to get my arm through and a lot less comfortable to carry. I know some people do the turtle thing where you wear one backpack on front and one on back. It just felt like it was going to be too much stuff hanging off of me or something. I don't know. I forget why I didn't try that, and maybe that would have helped, but this was just not nearly as comfortable a carry on the way home, and I would have preferred something crossbody. However, it did work incredibly well as my weekend travel backpack on those shorter, smaller trips. So I'm a little bit divided. Partial fail. We'll call this one a partial fail. My next mistake was trying to pack like the travel vlogger, pack hacker, minimalist expert packers on YouTube, rather than just being super honest with myself about what I need and prefer and will genuinely reach for in different circumstances. So my goal was, of course, to save space as much as possible. I convinced myself that I could do that by packing just a pair of tights, not like yoga pants, but just those kind of tights that you wear under sort of a business casual skirt in the workplace kind of thing. They weren't sheer, they were opaque and a little bit thicker, but I told myself I would be fine with that as a bottom layer and my one pair of jeans that I wore on the plane and layers on top that were thinner, lighter, easier to pack. And that just ended up not being the case. So let me show you what the top layers were that I brought. First one is this Lululemon hoodie, which is very comfortable, very soft, but the inside is this like very smooth, athletic material. It's not thick and fuzzy and cozy. And again, I'm thinking, well, it's nice and thin and light and it'll pack down really well. To go on top of that, or to wear separately, I brought this flannel, which again, not thick and fleecy on the inside, just normal flannel material, normal flannel weight. And I tried those two things on together. What would have been a better test, I think, and would have forced me to be a little bit more honest, instead of trying those on in the warm and cozy comfort of my bedroom in early California fall, would have been probably to put them on and then go to Costco and go in like the dairy room or the produce room, like somewhere genuinely cold. And that maybe would have made me confront my own feelings about cold weather a little bit more honestly. But fact is, I really thought that I could make do with that until we were actually there in Spain. There was a generational storm that none of us really saw coming. So it was a lot colder for a lot longer than I had been anticipating. Not only that, my in-laws' house is very cold, but it was just so cold inside. And because it was a storm, we spent a lot of time just inside around the house as opposed to out and exploring. And while those tights and those layers might have been okay outside running around town, when I'm home sitting on the couch with a book, that is the last thing I want. I want cozy, thick, fleecy sweats. I want a cozy, thick hoodie to curl up in. And if we were only there for like a week, I probably could have made do being a little bit uncomfortable in some less than perfect layers. But for the amount of time that we were traveling and the amount of time that we spent at home being cozy, all I really wanted was my nice thick sweats. Of course, that does mean sacrificing a few more outfits, to be able to fit those things. But for me personally, it's worth it in that type of situation. And now, of course, another thing that had held me back from doing that is that in the past, when we traveled to visit my husband's parents, before we were carry-on only, I'd brought sweats and not worn them. So I thought, okay, when I have a big suitcase, it's one thing to bring those just in case items and not use them, but I wouldn't want them to take up that unnecessary huge amount of space if I don't use them. Now I know that for me personally, that is a sacrifice I'm willing to make, because I would rather bring them and not use them and think, oh man, I could have brought that other cute outfit, but I didn't, whatever, it's fine, than be sitting there shivering and uncomfortable and wishing that I had them, because that sucked. And it also sucked knowing that I had those things at home and wouldn't have needed to buy them. And so it kind of felt like a waste of money, although I do still reach for the items that I purchased in Spain. Like, I made sure to get something different than what I already had. I feel like I'm rambling and over explaining this too much. Point being, avoid the mistake that I made and just be so honest with yourself. You're not packing for anyone else. You're packing for you. So pack what you need, what you like, and what you will genuinely want to wear. For packing mistake number 3, let us revisit this bag that I intended to fill with purchases. Now this is an 18-liter bag total, so this main compartment I'm going to say is probably like 16 liters, which is a good amount of space. And I convinced myself that it was going to be more than enough for whatever I decided to buy. But I didn't actually test that theory on an ongoing basis. And it would have been easy to do so because I had the designated room. I wouldn't have had to pack up all of my other belongings to ensure that I had enough room for what I was buying. I would have only had to pack that designated completely separate space. But I didn't. I lulled myself into a false sense of security, and then I bought a couple of really thick fuzzy sweaters, sweatpants, because again, the weather was influencing my choices. And that made it very difficult to get everything I purchased home. And I have to give a huge shout out to Fjallraven here because I did not think that those zippers were going to hold, okay? I just thought there was going to come a point when those bags just completely gave up, split at the seams, and there would be clothing everywhere. But both Fjallraven bags held up incredibly well. Everything remained contained, no compromised seams or zippers or problems anywhere on either bag. So thank you, Fjallraven, for high quality products that allowed me to get all of my wayward purchases home. One thing that did really help with that endeavor was a purchase that I made in Spain at a market, and it is my €6 jacket that my mother-in-law convinced me I would absolutely need for our weekend in Manchester, and she was super right about that. Let me show you the jacket. This jacket right here, I purchased at just a little outdoor weekly market, tables piled high with secondhand clothes, okay? And I found this gem. What makes this jacket so incredible is not only zippered pockets, but also the zippered collar. And it does have a hood that folds away into here, but it's a very thin, very small hood. So you can fit both that and a rolled up long sleeve collared shirt, for example, or some leggings, maybe both if you really roll them tightly. And then you can either wear this on the plane, or what I ended up doing, just because it was so hot in the airports, was this little tab here. I just clipped onto the carabiner on my backpack, and this became like a third piece of luggage that I didn't have to pay extra for. Now, your mileage may vary with that. I wouldn't suggest planning on using a jacket like that, just clipping it on and assuming that no one's going to make you wear it or pay for it or whatever. I did it out of desperation and poor planning previously, so I'm not advocating for that. I don't want you to get into a bind, but it really did come in clutch, and it's something that I know I'll be looking for in the future, is things like zippered pockets or a zippered collar or just secure compartments on a coat, because that ends up being very, very useful for travel. My next packing mistake, half purchasing mistake, but it is this scarf that I refer to as the blanket scarf because it is huge and thick and soft, and I wear it like that on the plane. And I got this at Stradivarius. It was one of the first purchases that I made in Spain, and on the day that I bought it, it was super cold, cloudy. As soon as my mother-in-law and I stepped out of the store, it started just pouring down rain. So in the moment, this seemed like a very smart purchase because I could wear it as a scarf, as a shawl, just throw it over myself as a blanket on the couch. However, this thing sheds like crazy, or it used to. After washing, it's much better. I don't know if you can tell kind of the fabric, the way that it could do that, but there were just little black and brown fuzzies all over the place. And I wish I had considered a way to quarantine this thing. Like, I had a laundry bag slash shoe bag that I was using for shoes that zipped. I could have packed another zippered pouch or even just a Ziploc bag some way. Although, as you can see, it's very thick and large, so probably would have strained the confines of most like grocery store type bags. But this got all over everything. I'm still finding the little fuzzies on and in both of the bags that I brought. So no regrets about purchasing it. I love this thing. It has already been so useful, and I'll continue to reach for it, particularly now since it's been washed and it's not doing that anymore. But I wish that I had thought about an extra bag, flat, light, takes up practically no room and no weight, but just to be able to confine the random other thing that might need to be kept separate from other packed clothes and things like that. There is no visual aid for the final packing fail that I want to talk about. This is just one that we're going to chat about, and that is only being considerate of the amount of weight in my bag when there was an outside constraint against it. So, for example, some airlines limit you to a 10 kilogram weight limit, which I think is about 22 pounds, when you're flying with a carry-on or carry-on only or by a certain seat, whatever. I know that that was the limit on one of our flights. And the way that that particular leg of the journey worked out logistically, we had some time to kill in Valencia, and so we spent a few hours wandering around the city, did a lot of walking. There's like a park that goes all the way around the city that I think used to be the moat. There's this tower with two sort of separate towers and stairs that go up, and you kind of go down one side and up the other with these amazing panoramic views of the city. And I remember thinking, I am at the absolute top weight in this backpack that would be comfortable for me to do these activities. And when I'd been packing, I remember feeling like, oh man, there's, I want to bring this other thing, that other layer, and weighing my bag and having to take things out and feeling a little bit bummed about it. But then being super, super grateful for that weight limit when I actually had to function and be exploring a city while carrying it on my back all day. So I wish I had been more considerate of that when I didn't have that weight limit, because then on the journey home, my bag was probably closer to 35, maybe 40 pounds when you consider both bags together. And that was very uncomfortable. Just at one point, our gate moved and we had to walk all the way across the airport completely from one end to the other. And that was an absolutely miserable experience. So in the future, whether or not an airline or some kind of outside limitation is placing a weight restriction on my bag, I'm going to think about that and be super honest with myself about what is comfortable and doable for me, particularly if it's going to interact with a planned activity like exploring a city when I'll have to be carrying the bag. Of course, the airport stuff happens, your gate's going to change, and it's always good to kind of think about that, but 1,000% I would have been so miserable and not enjoyed my experience in Valencia at all if I'd had the full weight of my backpack. But fortunately, I was still able to have an amazing day and not be completely crushed or limited by the bag I was carrying. And that is everything. That is all the wisdom that I have to impart to you today, all of the mistakes to which I had to confess. I hope that you learned something, that you take something from this video, and that you keep some of these things in the back of your mind for the next time that you are packing for a trip, so that you can give yourself the absolute best time possible. Safe travels, gentle friends, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.